The biting, damp cold of the London winter does not simply chill your skin. It settles deep inside the marrow of your bones like a heavy lead weight. You are standing in the freezing sleet on a cobblestone street in 1840, staring up at a massive, towering structure of blackened brick. The building has no decorative windows. It is surrounded by a towering, imposing stone wall, topped with jagged, broken glass, set into raw mortar. It looks exactly like a maximum security penitentiary. You have not committed a crime. You have not stolen a single loaf of bread. You have not murdered, and you have not forged a signature. Your only crime in the eyes of the British Empire is that you have completely run out of money. You are poor. And in the Victorian era, poverty is not viewed as an economic misfortune. It is officially diagnosed and relentlessly prosecuted as a highly contagious, deeply offensive moral disease. To cure this disease, the government has built the ultimate machine of human despair, the Union Workhouse. As you approach the heavy, rusted iron gates, your starving children clinging desperately to your ragged coat, you are about to make the most horrifying transaction of your life. By pulling the heavy iron bell and stepping across this threshold, you are legally surrendering your fundamental status as a human being. You are voluntarily signing away your autonomy, your dignity, and your family, agreeing to be fed directly into an industrial meat grinder designed specifically to punish you for starving. If you have the psychological endurance to endure the absolute darkest, most oppressive chapter of the Victorian welfare system, hit the like button right now. It is your mandatory toll to open the iron gates. We are about to execute a clinical, visceral audit of the ultimate institutional nightmare. You stand at the door, shivering, believing that any roof is better than freezing to death in the gutter. You believe the state is offering you charity. That is your first catastrophic psychological deception. The men who built this fortress did not design it to save you. They designed it to make you beg for the gutter. Welcome to the dawn of the new poor law. The system operating here is not a charity. It is a highly calculated, meticulously engineered psychological weapon. In 1834, the British government passed a piece of legislation that completely revolutionized the treatment of the lower classes. The wealthy politicians sitting in the warm, opulent halls of Parliament decided that offering free food or money to the starving masses only encouraged laziness. They concluded that if the poor were comfortable, they would never work in the brutal, highly dangerous factories of the Industrial Revolution. To solve this, they created the workhouse system, built entirely on a merciless, unyielding bureaucratic doctrine known as the principle of less eligibility. The doctrine was chillingly simple. The living conditions inside the government workhouse must be deliberately, legally mandated to be vastly worse, more physically exhausting, and more psychologically agonizing than the absolute lowest paying, most miserable free labor job on the outside streets. The workhouse was engineered to be an environment so deeply repulsive, so inherently terrifying, that a starving man would rather work himself to death in a coal mine or freeze in an alleyway than ever ring the iron bell. You only enter the workhouse when the absolute only alternative left on earth is biological starvation. The heavy iron door creaks open. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a spotless dark wool uniform glares down at you. He is the workhouse master. He does not greet you. He does not offer a warm fire. He carries a thick, polished wooden cane, and he looks at your emaciated family with absolute, unmasked disgust. He herds you into a cold, stone-floored waiting room. You are subjected to a humiliating, highly aggressive interrogation. The master demands to know why you failed as a provider. He demands you list every single meager possession you own. He writes your name in a heavy, leather-bound ledger. With the stroke of his pen, you are no longer a citizen of London. You are legally classified as a pauper, a ward of the state. You think the humiliation of the interview is the hardest part. You believe the worst is over now that you are inside. You look at your spouse and your children, silently promising them that you will survive this hardship together. This brings us to the ultimate, crushing institutional betrayal. You are not going to survive this together. The state is about to surgically amputate your entire family. The master strikes his heavy wooden cane against the stone floor. Crack. The order is given. Orderlies step forward and aggressively tear your family apart. The Victorian workhouse operates under a system of total, absolute segregation. Wives are violently separated from their husbands. Children over the age of 7 are ripped screaming from the arms of their mothers. You reach out, crying, begging the master to let you stay with your child. An orderly strikes you hard across the shoulder with a heavy leather strap, forcing you into a line of other men. You are marched down a dark, freezing corridor to the men's ward. Your wife is dragged to the women's ward on the opposite side of the sprawling, prison-like complex. Your children are locked in the juvenile wing. The architecture of the workhouse is specifically designed as a panopticon of emotional torture. Massive brick walls divide the exercise yards. You will spend the next several years living in the exact same building as your family, sometimes catching a fleeting, agonizing glimpse of your wife's face across a crowded dining hall. But you are strictly, legally forbidden to speak to her. If you wave, if you whisper her name, or if you attempt to touch your own child, you will be thrown into a pitch-black, freezing solitary confinement cell in the basement and starved for 48 hours. The state has successfully dissolved your marriage and your parenthood, but the stripping of your identity has only just begun. You are marched into the receiving ward. The orderlies force you to strip completely naked in a freezing, drafty stone room. Your ragged clothes, the very last physical remnants of your life outside, are confiscated, boiled, and locked away. You are forced into a rusted iron tub filled with freezing water and harsh, burning carbolic acid soap. They scrub your skin with stiff bristled brushes until you are raw and bleeding, allegedly to kill the lice, but practically to strip away your remaining dignity. A barber with rusted shears aggressively shaves your head to the scalp. You are then handed the official workhouse uniform. It is made of coarse, unbleached, highly abrasive canvas and heavy, itchy wool. It is dyed a dull, depressing institutional gray. It does not fit. It is designed to be deeply uncomfortable, chafing your raw skin with every single movement. You are no longer a man. You are an institutional unit. The master points to a number stamped in heavy black ink on the collar of your coarse wool shirt. You will not be addressed by your given name. You will respond only to that number. You stand in the freezing stone hallway, shivering in your abrasive uniform, entirely stripped of your family, your hair, your clothes, and your name. You think the psychological destruction is the primary punishment. You assume you will simply sit in a cell. The true horror of the workhouse is that the state demands payment for the miserable roof over your head, and they extract that payment directly from your muscles, your joints, and your bleeding fingernails. A heavy brass bell rings. The sound echoes violently through the damp brick corridors. It is 5 a.m. You are marched into the labor yard in the freezing, pre-dawn darkness. The workhouse does not provide meaningful, productive labor. They do not teach you a trade. The labor is explicitly, sadistically designed to be as exhausting, painful, and deeply useless as humanly possible. It is purely punitive. You are ordered to sit on a cold wooden bench. A massive, heavy pile of old, rotting naval ropes is dumped at your feet. These ropes are as thick as a man's arm, heavily encrusted with decades of hardened black tar, sea salt, and filth from the bottom of British warships. Your task is picking oakum. You must physically untwist and unpick the rock-hard, tar-soaked ropes down to their individual microscopic fibers, which the government will later sell to seal the hulls of new ships. You do not have tools. You must use your bare hands. You dig your thumbnails into the hardened black tar. You pull. The heavy, abrasive fibers resist. Within the first 2 hours, the skin underneath your fingernails splits open. Blood begins to pool around your cuticles. The salt water and the toxic black tar aggressively infect the open wounds. Your fingers cramp into agonizing, rigid claws, but you cannot stop. You must pick 3 pounds of oakum every single day. If you fail to meet your quota, your food rations will be immediately, mercilessly slashed. You sit there for 10 agonizing hours, tearing at the unyielding ropes, your hands turning into a bleeding, blistered, black mass of tar and torn flesh, while the master slowly patrols the room with his wooden cane. Absolute silence is mandatory. If you speak to the man next to you, you are beaten. And if you are a strong, able-bodied man, the oakum is considered too easy. You are marched to the crank machine. This is the absolute pinnacle of Victorian sadism. The crank is a heavy iron handle attached to a metal drum filled with sand. It does nothing. It grinds no wheat. It pumps no water. It is a machine of pure, useless resistance. You are ordered to turn the heavy iron crank 10,000 times a day. The master can tighten a specialized screw on the drum to make the resistance heavier, pushing your shoulder joints to the absolute brink of dislocation. You stand in a dark, narrow brick stall, pushing a heavy iron handle in a circle for 12 hours, entirely alone, earning thousands of calories to achieve absolutely nothing but your own physical collapse. When the labor finally ends, the heavy brass bell rings for the meal. You stagger into the massive, echoing dining hall. Hundreds of identical, gray, emaciated men sit at long wooden tables in terrifying, absolute silence. The orderlies hand you a wooden bowl. This is the dietary torture of the Victorian state. The food is mathematically calculated by government physicians to provide the absolute minimum number of calories required to keep your heart beating, but not a single calorie more. Your primary diet is gruel. It is a thin, watery, deeply unappetizing slop made of cheap oatmeal boiled in murky water, sometimes featuring a microscopic trace of rotting onions or heavily salted, rancid meat fat. It tastes like wet cardboard and despair. You are given a small chunk of rock-hard, stale bread. There are no fresh vegetables. There is no fruit. You eagerly drink the warm slop, your starving stomach cramping violently. But the gruel is a biological trap. Because you are burning thousands of calories on the crank machine or shivering in the freezing oakum room, the meager rations place your body in a permanent, agonizing state of severe caloric deficit. You are starving to death in extreme slow motion. Your body begins to consume its own muscle tissue to survive. You lose 20 pounds in the first month. Your eyes sink into your skull. Because of the total absence of vitamin C, you begin to develop institutional scurvy. Your gums turn black and bleed into your gruel. Your teeth loosen. You sit at the long wooden table, chewing on your stale bread with bleeding gums, your hands black with tar and ripped open, completely exhausted from turning a useless iron crank. You look across the room and catch a brief, agonizing glimpse of your child through an iron grate, looking just as skeletal and pale as you are. The psychological and physical destruction is complete. The state has successfully ground your humanity into a fine gray dust. The winter deepens. You develop a severe, racking cough. The damp, freezing conditions of the brick workhouse, combined with your state-mandated malnutrition, ensure that your immune system is entirely non-existent. You collapse in the labor yard, unable to turn the heavy iron crank. The master does not call for a physician. You are dragged to the infirmary, which is nothing more than a dark, unheated room filled with dying men coughing up blood. You lie on a thin, lice-infested straw mattress. There is no medicine. There is no comfort. You die entirely alone in the dark, stripped of your name, your family, and your dignity. But the horror of the workhouse does not end when your heart stops beating. The state is not finished extracting value from your corpse. because you died a pauper without the funds for a private burial, and because you are separated from your family, who cannot claim your body, the state invokes the terrifying power of the Anatomy Act. You are not given a funeral. You are not placed in a marked grave. Your emaciated, tar-stained body is loaded onto a wooden cart in the middle of the night and legally sold to the elite medical schools of London. Your final destination is a blood-stained wooden table in a brightly lit surgical amphitheater, where wealthy medical students will slice your face apart and laugh at dark jokes, completely erasing the final physical proof that you ever existed. We look back at the 1840s, and we shudder at the massive, blackened brick walls of the Victorian workhouses. We read Charles Dickens, and we view the cruel masters and the watery gruel as dark, exaggerated relics of a brutal, primitive society. We feel incredibly secure in our modern world of social safety nets, human rights, and regulated labor laws. We believe the era of punishing poverty with physical agony is permanently closed. But the psychological reality of institutional cruelty has never truly stopped grinding. We no longer force the poor to pick tar-soaked oakum or term useless iron cranks. But the fundamental, deeply embedded societal belief that poverty is a moral failure, a disease that requires punishment rather than compassion, remains entirely intact. We design our modern cities with hostile architecture, placing metal spikes on public benches to ensure the homeless cannot sleep. We build sprawling, privatized, highly profitable prison industrial complexes that rely on the mass incarceration of the impoverished, forcing them to labor for pennies an hour to manufacture consumer goods for the outside world. We weaponize modern bureaucracy, forcing desperate families to navigate intentionally complex, humiliating digital mazes just to receive the meager food assistance required to keep their children alive. The heavy iron gates of the workhouse have been torn down, and the rusted cranks have been sold for scrap, but the ultimate, terrifying goal of the system remains exactly the same: to ensure that the absolute bottom of society is so agonizing, so deeply humiliating, that you will endure any abuse from the machine to avoid falling into it. If you were freezing on the streets of London in 1840, watching your children starve, would you pull the heavy iron bell of the workhouse, knowing you would be stripped of your name and forced to bleed over tarred ropes? Or would you choose to quietly fade away in the snow together, holding on to the only thing the state couldn't take from you? Answer carefully. The history of dark institutions is written entirely by the men holding the heavy wooden canes, never by the people wearing the coarse gray wool. Make your survival choice known in the comments below. The archivista is logging your answers, and the master is still demanding his quota. If you thought the physical, crushing exhaustion of the workhouse was the absolute worst the Victorian government had to offer, you truly have no idea what the elite medical establishment was doing to the bodies that the workhouse threw away. They didn't just want to punish the poor in life. They wanted to completely dismantle them in death. Click the video on your screen right now to enter the horrifying, mud-caked, and highly classified world of the Anatomy Act and the Resurrection Men, where your ancestor's grave was merely a waiting room for the surgeon's scalpel. I'll see you in the archives.